There's a certain type of person who seems to disappear from people's lives without warning. One day they're present, texting, laughing, sharing parts of their world, and the next day they're gone. Calls unanswered, messages left unread, connections quietly severed. To outsiders, it can look cold or even cruel. People often assume someone who cuts everyone off must be heartless, dramatic, or simply unwilling to deal with conflict. But psychology suggests something much deeper is usually happening beneath the surface. In many cases, the act of cutting people off isn't about arrogance or indifference. It's about protection. For some individuals, relationships slowly become emotionally overwhelming. They may have spent years feeling misunderstood, drained, or repeatedly hurt in ways they never fully addressed. Instead of confronting every issue directly, they often internalize their feelings. Over time, this creates emotional pressure, almost like a container slowly filling with water. At first, they tolerate small disappointments. Then they tolerate bigger ones. But eventually, the container reaches its limit. When that happens, the person doesn't gradually step away. They detach suddenly. To others, it feels abrupt, but to them, it feels like the final moment after a long buildup. Another psychological factor is the fear of vulnerability. Some people grow up learning that trusting others leads to disappointment or betrayal. When relationships begin to feel too emotionally risky, their instinct is to retreat before they can be hurt again. Cutting someone off becomes a form of emotional self-defense. It creates distance, and distance creates safety. Even if the relationship wasn't actually dangerous, their mind interprets closeness as a potential threat. There's also a sense of control involved. People who have felt powerless in relationships sometimes reclaim their power by deciding when and how connections end. Instead of waiting to be rejected, ignored, or abandoned, they become the one who leaves first. In their mind, walking away protects their dignity. It allows them to avoid the feeling of being the one who was left behind. Ironically, many people who cut others off aren't as detached as they appear. In fact, they often feel emotions very intensely, but instead of expressing those feelings openly, they handle them by creating silence and distance. From the outside, it looks like indifference. On the inside, it's often a complicated mix of hurt, self-protection, and the desire to finally find peace. For many people who cut everyone off, relationships are mentally exhausting. They are often highly sensitive to emotional energy, whether from friends, family, or coworkers. While others can navigate social conflicts or repeated disappointments with relative ease, these individuals feel emotional strain more intensely. Each conversation, argument, or expectation becomes a small weight, and over time, those weights accumulate. When they reach a breaking point, the easiest way to relieve the pressure is to step back completely. Cutting people off is less about punishing others and more about self-preservation. It's a way to protect their mental and emotional well-being. Another common psychological aspect is the avoidance of drama. People who cut ties often have low tolerance for repeated cycles of conflict or gossip. Over time, they may notice patterns of toxicity or behavior that consistently drains them, whether intentional or not. Instead of repeatedly confronting those patterns, they choose to remove themselves entirely. This isn't laziness or apathy. It's a deliberate choice to prioritize mental clarity. In many ways, it's a boundary mechanism. While some might express boundaries verbally, others do it physically by disengaging. Some individuals also fear dependency, either theirs or others. They might feel that relationships can become too emotionally consuming, or that they can lose themselves in others' needs. By cutting off relationships, they regain a sense of independence and agency. This autonomy allows them to control their time, energy, and emotional availability without constant negotiation or compromise. In their mind, it is safer to disconnect than to risk losing balance by maintaining potentially draining connections. People who cut everyone off also often value inner peace over external approval. They're usually self-reflective and deeply aware of how certain interactions affect their mood, thoughts, and overall life trajectory. When maintaining relationships comes at the cost of their stability or happiness, the cost begins to outweigh the perceived benefit. Walking away becomes a conscious choice rather than an impulsive reaction. Silence, distance, and even disappearance serve as tools to create emotional space. While it may seem extreme to outsiders, it's rarely impulsive. The decision to disconnect is often carefully considered. They know what they need to feel safe, centered, and in control. In essence, cutting ties is a survival strategy for their emotional and mental health, rather than an expression of malice or cruelty. There's also a pattern of past trauma or repeated disappointment in the lives of many people who cut everyone off. Often, they have experienced betrayals, abandonment, or situations where trust was broken. These experiences create a lens through which they interpret relationships. Closeness equals potential pain. Over time, their nervous system learns to anticipate hurt before it happens. Cutting people off preemptively is a way to protect themselves from experiencing more of the same. It's a coping mechanism developed from real, lived experiences rather than a random personality trait. Many silent disengagers are highly introspective. They spend a lot of time analyzing motives, outcomes, and patterns in their relationships. They notice red flags earlier than most people and may become disillusioned when repeated patterns emerge. Rather than wasting energy on confrontation, explanation, or negotiation, they choose to step back completely. It's often more efficient for them emotionally to remove themselves from the source of stress than to continually engage. While this may appear abrupt or cold, internally, it's a deliberate method for maintaining emotional equilibrium. Control over personal space and energy is central. People who cut others off are often extremely protective of their time and emotional bandwidth. They tend to see relationships as exchanges of energy. If a connection drains more than it nurtures, they're quick to eliminate it. Unlike those who stay in draining situations out of obligation, fear, or habit, silent cutters prioritize well-being over societal expectations or social norms. They are willing to tolerate temporary social judgment if it ensures long-term mental health and clarity. Interestingly, cutting people off doesn't always mean isolation. Many silent achievers still form relationships, but they do so selectively. They invest in connections where reciprocity, respect, and mutual understanding exist. They tend to avoid relationships that are performative, toxic, or emotionally exhausting. Their ability to disengage quickly is a sign of emotional intelligence. They know when to let go and when to hold on. Ultimately, the psychology behind cutting everyone off reflects a combination of self-preservation, trauma response, and deep self-awareness. It's rarely impulsive, and it's rarely about punishing others. It's about maintaining balance in a world that can be overwhelming emotionally. Over time, people who cut everyone off often develop a strong sense of autonomy. They no longer rely on external validation to feel whole or successful. Their self-worth isn't tied to being liked, approved, or included. This independence can make them appear distant or unapproachable, but in reality, it's a reflection of emotional self-sufficiency. They've learned that relying too heavily on others can create vulnerability, and they prefer to navigate life on their own terms, rather than compromise their peace of mind. Many of these individuals also have a heightened capacity for reflection and self-growth. Because they spend less time managing social obligations or appeasing others, they can devote more attention to personal development. They're often acutely aware of their strengths, weaknesses, and triggers. This self-awareness allows them to make deliberate choices about who they interact with, which environments they enter, and how they invest their energy. Cutting people off becomes less about avoidance and more about curating a life that aligns with their emotional needs. It's also common for them to experience complex emotions surrounding their choices. While cutting someone off is a protective act, it can come with guilt, regret, or sadness. Many silently mourn the connections they leave behind. The difference is that they weigh these feelings against the benefits of maintaining stability. Their decision-making prioritizes long-term mental and emotional health over short-term discomfort or social approval. Silent disengagement can be misunderstood. Outsiders often view it as arrogance, indifference, or coldness, but for those who practice it, it's deeply thoughtful. It requires self-reflection, courage, and discipline. They're willing to face social criticism or loneliness because they understand the value of preserving internal balance. In a world that constantly demands attention, connection, and validation, choosing peace over presence is a radical act of self-care. In the end, the psychology of people who cut everyone off reflects an intricate balance of self-preservation, emotional intelligence, and personal growth. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's intentional. Their distance isn't rejection, it's protection. And their ability to step away reminds us that sometimes The healthiest thing we can do is remove what no longer serves our emotional well-being. The quiet strength of these individuals lies in knowing when to walk away and trusting that solitude can be just as powerful as connection.